On the morning of December 3, 2001, employees of Enron walked out of their tower in downtown Houston carrying cardboard boxes. The day before, the company had filed the largest bankruptcy in American history. 20,000 people worked for Enron. Many of them had their retirement savings in Enron stock, and for weeks that fall, while the stock collapsed, their accounts had been frozen. They watched their savings burn through a locked window. A year earlier, this company had been worth nearly $70 billion, and Fortune magazine had named it America's most innovative company 6 years in a row. Its slogan was 2 words: ask why. Almost nobody had. Enron started as the most boring business imaginable: natural gas pipelines. 1985, Kenneth Lay merged 2 pipeline companies into a firm that needed a name, and Enron was invented. But in the 1990s, Enron stopped being an energy company. Under Jeffrey Skilling, it became a trading floor, a company that bought and sold contracts on gas, on electricity, on weather, on anything that moved. The pipelines were steel in the ground. The new Enron was paper, and the people running it were celebrated as the smartest guys in the room. What the market never quite asked was the question on Enron's own billboards: why were the profits growing so much faster than the cash? Here is the machine at the center of it. In 1992, Enron won approval to use an accounting method called mark-to-market. Under mark-to-market, when Enron signed a 20-year energy deal, it did not book the profits over 20 years. It estimated the entire lifetime profit and booked all of it immediately, the day of the signature. The estimate was the earnings. If reality later fell short, the gap had to be filled with new deals, booked the same way. It was a treadmill that only ran faster. Enron's reported profits were not money in the bank. They were opinions about the future written down as fact. And the debts? Those went somewhere else. Enron's finance chief, Andrew Fastow, built a web of partnerships with names out of science fiction: Chuco, the Raptors, LJM. On paper, they were independent companies. In practice, they existed to buy Enron's troubled assets and hold Enron's debt, so that neither showed up on Enron's balance sheet. Fastow ran the partnerships himself, negotiating against his own employer, and personally pocketed some $45 million for it. Quarter after quarter, the published numbers showed a clean, growing company. The photograph was taken after the mess had been carried into the room next door. The warnings were public. In March 2001, a Fortune reporter named Bethany McLean published a simple question: is Enron overpriced? Her observation was devastating precisely because it was basic. Nobody could explain how Enron actually made its money. A month later, on an earnings call, an investor pressed Skilling on why Enron, alone among financial firms, could not produce a balance sheet with its earnings. Skilling's answer, on a recorded call, was to insult him with a word we can't repeat here. That summer, the sellers started circling, and inside the building, an executive named Sharon Watkins wrote Kenneth Lay a memo that history would memorize. I am incredibly nervous that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandals. By then, the man who built the machine had already reached for the door. On August 14th, 2001, Jeffrey Skilling, chief executive for just 6 months, resigned, citing personal reasons. The stock had been sliding all year. Watkins sent her memo to Lay within days. Lay reassured employees that the company had never been stronger and encouraged them to buy the dip. Some did, with their retirement accounts. Meanwhile, the partnerships that held Enron's hidden debt had a design flaw. They were propped up with Enron's own stock. As the shares fell, the hiding places themselves began to fail. The machine that buried the losses was running out of dirt. The end took about 60 days. On October 16th, Enron announced a $618 million quarterly loss and quietly erased over $1 billion of shareholder value tied to Fastow's partnerships. The SEC opened an inquiry within the week. Fastow was fired. On November 8th, Enron confessed in a filing that its profits going back to 1997 had been overstated by more than $500 million. Nearly 5 years of earnings, restated. Trading partners demanded collateral Enron did not have. Credit ratings fell. Falling ratings triggered debts. Triggered debts crushed the rating further. Rescue merger collapsed on November 28th. On December 2nd, Enron filed for bankruptcy. The fire spread from there. Enron's auditor, Arthur Andersen, one of the 5 great accounting firms on earth, had blessed every one of those numbers, and when the SEC came knocking, its Houston office fed Enron documents into shredders. The firm was convicted of obstruction of justice, a verdict the Supreme Court would overturn years later, far too late to matter, and destroyed. Tens of thousands of its people lost their jobs. Fastow pleaded guilty and served 6 years. Skilling was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 24 years. Kenneth Lay was convicted too and died before sentencing. Congress answered with the toughest accounting reform since the Great Depression, and every public company in America still lives under it. The employees' frozen retirement accounts never came back. The lesson of Enron is not that a few executives lied, though they did. It is that the truth was available the whole time. The cash that never matched the profits was in the public filings. The unanswerable balance sheet question was asked out loud on a recorded call months before the end. A reporter found it. A short seller found it. An executive inside the building wrote it down in a memo. The system saw the numbers and preferred the story. The official verdict was written by the courts, but the postmortem writes itself. The only question is whether anyone reads it before the next one.